about compositional methods for spatialization. I tried to focus on the justification for even starting to working with 3D audio and to spatialize sounds, and about my pieces, compositions, where I tried to find some solutions for these problems we find when we start working with spatialization. Just a few words about me. So I already studied composition like over 10 years ago in Dresden, and I organized 3D audio concerts called Into Sound in Berlin, and this got me so into 3D audio, especially ambisonics. I was so fascinated and found so much joy in it that I decided to go to IEM Graz, which you all know is quite specialized in ambisonics, and I'm studying there. And yeah, my main compositional work is in this field. When we start going into immersive formats like ambisonics, we start from frontal representations like stereo that we are extremely familiar with in opera, in concerts, in the cinema even. And then when we try to do something different, it feels still so unusual, so uncommon for us, in my opinion. And we are still only beginning to really understand what we can do with this new format. And even when we are in the cinema, we have 5.1, so the Atmos okay, but there's also a frontal tendency. So what is in the background is normally only background noise, it's not so important. So it's not uniform, the layout. So when we now go into this field, for example, I will focus a little bit about ambisonics because this is my main field, but I think you can also say the same about different video audio formats. We also have to think about the loudspeaker setups, the formations. For example, normally they are circular, like an octophonie, and then we don't have a tendency, like a frontal tendency in 5.1 where you have a center speaker. But of course you can also do that when you know that the audience is facing a certain direction. Then you have more speakers in the front, which makes complete sense. But if everybody is eating randomly, then of course uniform layout is much better. I found it quite amazing when I added just 2 speakers behind me in my setup at home, and I really felt, wow, this is adding so much that all of a sudden the sounds can move through me, around me, and this is already so unusual only with adding 2 speakers, which also initiated my fascination for this field. Some quick words again about ambisonics that I noticed, some tendencies in the concerts, for example, that everything feels a little bit too high, which has several reasons. It depends on the panel that we are using, you know, the stereo encoder. Already when you start moving the dot around, you're actually too high or higher, not anymore on the horizon, because we normally don't use the lower sphere. Also, it depends on the height of the speakers. We want to be over the heads of the audience, so it has to be higher. So this is again a problem that we have to face, and I'm noticing it again and again. But also I think we have to keep in mind that most of the simpler layouts are just horizontal, like octophonie, and normally we don't have this luxury of this amazing setup like the Kubus or the Cube at the IM. And in my own work, I focus a little bit more on horizontal layouts without thinking too much about the height, actually. So, yeah, now I come to this topic. I was thinking a little bit about these terms that we use. A lot of people also here are using 3D audio, which I use all the time. It's quite technical, I think it's fine. It's for everybody, it's clear what it means, but I look for some different terms that can be interesting, and you can have a quick look. I like, for example, circumspace for horizontal layouts, probably only. We have immersive sound, but not everything what we do is immersive. Sometimes we don't want to immerse the listener, so that's not perfect. The lower ones are too specific for a format. Of course, you cannot use episodic. Spatial audio is unfortunately taken by every music, I have the feeling. So all these terms are not ideal in my opinion. Maybe video audio, sound music is fine. I would like to talk about the justification in even working in 3D audio. I think when we started with that, it was just cool, in my opinion. Of course it's cool when the sounds move around me and maybe above me, but maybe it's a fine justification, but not the best one. Maybe we want to enhance the experience for the audience. We want to immerse the listener, but maybe we want to impress the listener, where I also would say, probably not the best justification. And when we start, or I started like this, we do the washing machine. Everything goes round and round, and that's fine for a moment, but then you feel, maybe I can do something else as well. What we see here, I think this is quite famous, quote from them this morning. It's already giving maybe us a direction where we can go for specialization, so that we use sounds that already carry a space with them, and then we can work with the space that is already inherent in the sound. Also not a bad justification, in my opinion. So to make everything a bit clearer, discernible in the music when we split it up spatially. So some methods I use that I found interesting, I want to show you. First of all, another quote from Mario Balmer, from Malaysia, where he was thinking, this is actually like a fourth dimension that we have to tackle, that we have to conquer. And this can be quite a lot. What I now try to do before I even start opening up software, I try to sketch in mind what the specialization could be. This helps me to start with thinking about specialization and not already about technical solutions or even the music. So I start with the specialization. And what I did here, what I'm still trying out, I tried like a spatial sheet paper. So these are just circles with minutes, and you can imagine like looking from the top onto the loudspeaker setup. And then you could try to sketch out specialization in these circles for every 30 seconds, for example. I tried different versions. Also here you can add comments and whatever to start with specialization and not like having it as an afterthought. Okay, I have the music and now whatever left, right, okay. So do it like this and like that. So I collected here some methods we have as our proposal to work with. So of course it's planning rotation of the sound source is already a bit more special, so changing the directivity actually. So you can have a quick look. I mean, when we go to the sound fields, it gets a bit more interesting, a bit more special, because when we record with an episonic microphone, for example, a sound field, or we create a sound field, it feels quite stiff to work with it. We can rotate it, we can tilt and shift it, but can we compress it? We can't work with it just like a mono sound file. It's too big in a sense. But there are some methods. When you look at the suites from IM and Sparta, from Alto Uni, you find like this Compass 6 plugin where you can combine different recorded sound feeds into a new one. I will also show you some plugins that are probably not so well known that I really like. For example, for the separation, division and muting of regions in the sound field, which is interesting. You can separate the frequencies and I mean, you can read on your own. Exactly. So, for example, this one is for free. It's from Matthias Kohlakos, the MX suite, and I see it rarely actually, but I found it quite amazing. So imagine that this is your sound field. In different regions, you can change the gain. You even can delete regions out of the sound field, or enhance. For example, you have a concert and somebody is coughing in a certain direction, maybe you can remove this, you can try it at least. And I used it in several pieces I will show you later. And this one is not for free, but it's nice because you can push the sound field in certain directions. You can see I already pushed it to the front right, for example. You can change the omni signal so that it's more omnidirectional. You can change the gains of the individual X, Y, Z axis, and of course rotate and shift as well. So let me now come to some pieces where tried different versions, so these are just the covers so that you have also a picture for the piece. So this is a piece, La Porta del Dado, where I started with doors flying around in space, and they collapse into a sphere at the front, getting like completely destroyed. So we go from immersion to mono, even. Then I open up again the space with this distorted sound, and then I segmented the space into regions, and these were rhythmically musically composed in this way. The next piece, I did a few more interesting methods. It's called Pendulum, and I recorded 4 Bisonics recordings around this Herzian church in Karlsruhe, and combined all these 4 sound fields into one sound field. And there is, I think I have a picture of this plugin. This is this Compass 6 stuff where you can combine something, actually 5, and then you can move around through the sound fields. And I could even go back in time. So I did a circle with recordings, so they were not simultaneous. And then I can go do the circle the other way around, something like this. Can play around with this. Always the question is, does the audience get this or not? But this is, I think, a standard question. What I did with these sections as well, I will come to this simulation in a second, is to move portions of the sound fields around this direction loudness plugin what I showed you before, in a way that was dictated by the simulation of a double pendulum. And I did some, I think I will not show you because it's a bit complicated, but at least we have some pictures. I did some simulations of physical modeling, and you can all imagine how these balls are bouncing, getting guided by gravity. Double pendulum is a classic chaos example, so it's every time when you start it will look different. And I tried to map these 2 pendulums to my spatial movement, but also to sound changes. You can example when the double pendulum is closer to the center, the sound will be also seemingly closer or far away. It has more vibros, would be a simple translation. But it's always a translation that I'm thinking a lot about. So how can I make this movement audible actually? If I'm being too close to the simulation, then it feels like a technical exercise, a technical presentation. And look what I've done. It's a double pendulum, but in music, maybe I want to say a bit more. And then I go too far away from the simulation, you can't hear anymore, it's a double pendulum that is guiding the movement. And then it's the question, why did you actually use the double pendulum when it doesn't get translated into the music? Well, this is a problem I'm tackling a lot with. This is like bubbles in a sphere that are bouncing around, so spheres already closer to ambisonics. But we also have to see, we don't use the lower sphere, so they're bouncing on the floor, but I don't have speakers there. What do I do then? So all these problems, it's really not enough to have a nice simulation, but you have to do so much more work that has nothing to do with the simulation to make it clear and audible what you want to do. So, the next piece is called Collage number 8. I did during an artist residency in the Czech Republic. I did a lot of field recording, and my idea was like to make a musical collage where you have like small windows in the sound field, and in these windows are different sounds actually I can have a look at. So there's water, there are kitchen sounds, and there's something else. And this was also technically challenging. Like, for example, I used an ambisonics order that was too low to have the size optimization, so all these technical problems. And you couldn't, it was too blurry somehow to devise these windows, but it was an experiment. And this is quite a recent piece, Natura Morta, like an homage to Giorgio Morandi, this Italian painter from Bologna. And what I did there was also like a translation, of course, of the pictures, like a really abstract one, about my feelings that I have when I see these pictures. And I did some funny stuff here. And I tried to fix this microphone on my bike helmet, and then I went to the kitchen and cooked and had the hands free and could really get really close to my hands and get this view of me moving around in the kitchen, getting stuff and blah blah blah. And these are really close sounds. And what I just did was really simple in the SoundFit loudspeaker setup, that these sounds are in the front. And I recorded another episode recording in my courtyard, and this is in the back of the loudspeaker setup. So you have the separation of these two worlds, inner outer world, and yeah, stuff like this. And this is the picture. Sorry. I did a lot of recordings in Venice and at different locations, and like at the main station and close to water in the center of Venice, and then at the entrance of the church. And the idea was to create different variations of these recordings that try to show different temporal resolutions of the same recording. So like 4 times faster, or a lot slower, or taking the high frequencies, the ultrasound, transporting it down, and then showing all these different perspectives of the same sounds to the audience. And of course, if you just overlay them, it will be too overcrowded, you can't discern anymore different variations that I created. So this was perfect for spatialization, because then I could divide these different variations into different regions and push them in the front, back, and then you can, there are these Mickey Mouse voices of the 4 times faster version. And you can listen to these different parts. So again, to get back to my initial thought, justification that works for me, I think, yes, I needed actually the spatialization, and it will not work in stereo. I think this is a good test. If you can't say, no, in stereo, completely collapse it, I can't show you the piece in stereo, maybe with headphones, then it feels like maybe this was a good justification to use videos.
Questions? I see 2 questions. I start with video.
Hello, I really like your lecture. I have just a very small suggestion. It seems that we're not acoustically very aware of differences in space perceived. That means that we perceive very minutely rhythm changes and pitch changes. But according to listening to space, it has been taken advantage of in being applied to rhythmic contrast in the way of polychoral music, the Renaissance, and also by the pan flutes of Bolivia, which they go in a circle and they just go. And in new music, we have the fantastic example of Maurice Andriessen from the Netherlands, who did the Hoquet piece, Hoquetus, in 1973. Have you considered, which basically goes into contrast, is it sounding left or is it sounding right? But we can actually apply it to rhythmic perception very well by using different sound source, rather than pinpointing whether does it sound and do I recognize that sound coming from there, from here. Yeah. So my question, have you tried to apply the sound spatialization to rhythm composition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one piece in the first piece, La Porta del Dado, I tried it a bit, but it was not like that one region of the sound field is always playing one rhythm and another one another, and then you have this superposition. It wasn't so clear, but this would be one thing that I would like to explore much more. But I have the feeling we have so much to do and to explore, it's hard to, where do I start even? And to really explore space, for example, would be also something at least I have to start with.
Thanks.
Hello, Jan. Thank you for your talk. I have a question also regarding that. Yeah, I have enjoyed this spatialization exercise when I hear something in stereo and then hearing the dynamics. Yeah, it's incredible. But I always have this pushback of accessibility, no? How you as an artist, how do you feel or how do you think this accessibility problem can be solved? Or, for example, we have not heard your work because this accessibility precisely. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's still quite an experience to hear more than 2 loudspeakers. And I think you cannot expect that you always have it, you know. Of course, just 2 headphones is so much simpler. Maybe it's not too bad it stays a little bit of a luxury, but of course there are already a lot of ways where people are starting to make it more accessible. I think of Ottensheim, this Autosonics Festival, and Manu Mitterhuber is 3D printing really cheap speakers together with amplification. If you look for him, Manu Mitterhuber, Ottensheim, I think you will find it, and everything is available as a 3D print. And he printed already like 500 of these speakers and can just throw them around. And this is already a really, really good step. And I have to say, binaurally, we have to do a lot still, but I think there are a few techniques to enhance it, even without personalized HRTFs and all this stuff. That probably has to happen. Thank you.
One more question?
Yes, maybe kind of comment or question, both maybe. When we started to work with 3D audio, we didn't start to work with ambisonics, but in 2010-11, we started to work with a spatial sound wave system of Fraunhofer Europe. I think you know that. And what stunned us in the beginning was that the virtual loudspeakers, the virtualization of sound, we can put sound freely into space independently from a loudspeaker position. And this was stunning, especially for this reason, because then we would be able to place physical but virtualized entities within space, so you could walk around sound, so to say. So it took for us, the concept which we developed was less it's a diffusion or a panning system, it's a sculpting with sounds. So how do you relate to this idea?
Mm-hmm. And do you have a wave feed synthesis system?
Yes.
Ah, okay, yeah, then this is possible.
It's maybe a bit different, right, from concept-wise,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. So when I think of octophony episodic sound, it would be quasi impossible to get this feeling of the sound that is there in the center. It's when I go to the center, then it's just omnidirectional, so every speaker is playing. But without the wave feed synthesis, I think it's quite impossible. But yeah, this would be amazing.
Okay, thank you for your talk, Jakob Giele, and